I think that's about enough. If it's a fight you're looking for, Cyrodiil, I can gladly spar with you. I don't think you need to provoke my friend now, do you? Shiro asked as she tapped her finger on the table. Feeling the pressure from her, Cyrodiil understood that Shiro didn't mind dissolving their agreement immediately. She had the power to back it up after all. Deep down, Cyrodiil wasn't sure if she could actually win in a fight between the two of them. Fine. I'm only joking. But let's get to the main topic now. So far, I've come across 3 kinds of soldiers, Cyrodiil said as she sat down on her chair. First is the scouts. High mobility, good at evasion, hard to pin down. However, they have virtually zero attack power. They have a skill that lets them fade between realms and go invisible and can relay information back to the base the second they see it. I'm guessing they act similar to your cameras, Cyrodiil said while glancing at Shiro. The second are soldiers that I've found. They're what I like to call suiciders. Very high power, ignores most defenses, very fast, but paper-like defense. You can kill one with your bare hands, but once you do, they'll explode using all of the mana they have within them. And here's the main problem. There are a lot of these F***ers. If you kill one and prevent it from exploding, the energy will get transferred to the closest suicider, and they'll become stronger. Last but not least is the supporters. Flying units that will hit you with ranged crowd control and lower your defense so that the suiciders can kill you easily. They are hard to spot and have virtually zero attack power as well. They are just there to make your life harder. Very annoying. I would suggest wiping them out first, but killing them is no easy task. I don't know what skill they have, but when they're not casting a spell, they're practically invulnerable. There is only a small window of chance to kill them, and that is when they cast. Cyrodiil explained while Shiro brought up a world map. Are you able to show us where you fought them? Though I have a slight idea, Shiro said as waved her finger and the map started to turn. Seeing the time, they realized that she was showing them what happened a few hours ago. Suddenly, a breath attack bigger than New York appeared on the map. Bingo! If you rewind the footage, you'll be able to see what they look like. Cyrodiil smiled. Rewinding the video, Shiro could see the army that surrounded Cyrodiil. The scouts are androgynous beings with black mist enveloping their entire body and large elongated spider legs protruding from their back. From the video, Shiro could tell that they were faster than her. If she wanted to kill them, rely on ranged attacks. She didn't need to look for the suicider since there was one in the cage next to them. It was thin and practically had no flesh on its back. The skin stretched across the bones, and there seemed to be armor under the skin. On their chest, purple and red lights would pulse between their ribs like a beating heart. They have no eyes and deathly white skin. 2 rows of sharp teeth and a crown of bones sticking out of their skull. This crown seemed to twitch every so often and retract back into their head before protruding out again. Their use was unknown for now. Finally, the supports were hooded figures with no lower half. Instead of legs, it was just a collection of dense black mist. Protruding from their back was a pair of skeletal wings with purple and red energy where the membrane should be. How many other units are there? Shiro asked, since the army would definitely be more than just these 3. Otherwise, how would they destroy a majority of Earth? Well, there are quite a few, and I don't have a name for all of them. For now, think of them as adventurers. There are tanks, ranged units, berserkers, and even some strange units that are similar to the trebuchets. Cyrodiil shrugged. I see. Are there any changes to the ambient mana when they appear, or is it just instant? There's a slight shift, but it doesn't last long, so you might as well just call it instant. Cyrodiil shrugged. Hearing this, Shiro clicked her tongue. I haven't detected anything from the satellites, so I'm guessing they're teleporting them in rather than just catapulting them from space. I'm guessing the holes that you've poked into the barrier allows them to teleport small amounts of their army. If not, we would still be ignorant of their arrival. I'm not sure if they'll send any more, but it'll be good if we go deal with them now. I'll have the defense system of the city in full swing just in case they do attack. Same with the satellite. They should be able to deal with them with relative ease. As for the attack force against Rokarn, what are your inputs about this? You faced them before, after all. Shiro asked. A smaller party would be optimal. The main thing you have to remember is that this isn't just a fight against a large number of monsters. The main problem is Rokarn himself. With strong people like him, you know that numbers don't work. Cyrodiil said as Shiro nodded her head. True. All right, I think we'll stick with the main party. Misu is a must since her authority as the Undead Queen can help us create an army using Rokarn's units. Shiro said as Misu nodded her head. In the end, they decided on taking anyone that was higher than level 700, including Aram, even though she was level 695. Koji and Li Jian had to stay behind since they were only level 650 and were in too much danger to continue despite their class advantages. While they would get bonuses from Shiro's skills and divine court titles, there was simply too much at risk. The final party consisted of the following members: Shiro, Adi, Een, Lysandra, Estrella, Nimue, Izul, Nintion, Aram, Helion, Keiko, Sylvia, Chinyu, Misu, Essel, Revel, and Cyrodiil. You really think we can fight back a demigod and his army with a party of 17? Sylvia asked as she was a little unsure. They were powerful, yes, and had multiple skills that could demolish an army. But the problem was the lack of information. There were too many unknown factors. If they knew more, then she would be more confident about their chances. Do you have any allies that are higher than level 700? Shiro asked as Cyrodiil shook her head. Except for my pet summon, I don't have anyone else. Hearing this, Shiro scratched her head. Honestly, if it wasn't for Lyrica and the others, she would probably be solo like Cyrodiil with the exception of perhaps Nimue, Adi, Een, and Lysandra. Without Lyrica, she wouldn't have gone to the Elven capital and find Izul. So what's the plan now then? Cyrodiil asked while leaning back on her chair. I think I'll do some experimenting on this monster first. After that, I want to fight their scouting party to get some information about their power. Once that's done, we should be pretty much set to challenge them. If things do go south, I'll try to teleport us back so that we can regroup. I'll also see if I can get any information using my satellites, but it'll be hard. Shiro explained as Cyrodiil nodded. Contact me once you're done. I'm going to do some preparations of my own. Nodding her head, Shiro watched as Cyrodiil disappeared into a portal. Ending the meeting, Shiro made her way to a reinforced room with the suicider. Following behind her, Nantion was checking up on the monster's bio scans to see if anything was off. Noticing that this monster doesn't even eat mana. In fact, it has no body functions at all. It was as if this monster was a golem. Shiro had noticed this due to the fact that once it was in a no-mana zone, it would power off, which also explains why it was oddly silent during the meeting. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro opened the cage. Asterisk bang. Springing awake, the monster glared at Shiro and opened its mouth, ready to fire a shot at her. However, Shiro was not going to let him. Snapping her finger, a needle appeared in front of the monster and pierced into its chest. Collapsing to the ground once more, it lost its functions. Let's open it up, I suppose, Shiro said as she created an operating table next to him. Placing him on the table, she created a scalpel and started to dissect him. Occasionally, she would remove the needle to see how he works internally before putting the needle back. Seems like most of the monsters are just golems. They're not controlled remotely, but there should be a connection of sorts between them. Shiro thought to herself as she had an idea. She wanted to see if she could use this golem to remotely observe Rokarn's army. Continuing through the connection, Shiro found herself finding exits that led to stronger presences. Narrowing her eyes, she guessed that they were roughly in the high 800s, maybe in the 900s, which wasn't exactly reassuring. However, with how their party worked together and the skills that they have, it shouldn't be too hard. Or at least that's what she believes. Suddenly, she felt a pair of eyes lock onto her as cold sweat dripped down her back. She didn't think anyone could find her so easily. Just as she was about to cut the connection, she could herself floating in space in front of a being that sat on a throne. He had a lean physique that was clad in black-plated armor, a helmet placed by his side that had a red plume protruding from the top. A great sword could be seen pulsing next to him as he locked eyes with her. With dark red hair and black eyes, he stared at her wordlessly. Rokarn LVL 1000, demigod of chaos and slaughter, divinity 3. Air high. Shiro waved with a forced smile. His divinity is ranked 3. It's higher than the crow and most gods. According to Gaia, his divinity should be as powerful as the divinity belonging to primordials. She thought to herself. Furrowing his brows, he tapped his finger. Shiro wanted to leave, but there was a strange restriction binding her here. Error, help me out here, Shiro thought in her mind as she tried to get rid of the binding. While this was happening, Rokarn stood up and walked up to her. God Slayer, he said as Shiro swallowed her saliva. Haha, seems like you've heard of my recent title. She joked in response. I don't mean your current title bestowed by the system. Rokarn narrowed his eyes. Pardon, you don't know? Rokarn widened his eyes in surprise as he examined her once more. Sub-divinity of chaos and creation is indeed in your body. Then why don't you know? He growled as Shiro could tell that anger was building up in his eyes. However, just as he was about to make a move, her bindings finally loosened thanks to Error's help. Well, I'd love to talk, but in better circumstances. I suppose this is farewell for now. Shiro smiled as she quickly disappeared from the location. Staring at the empty space in front of him, Rokarn frowned and raised his hand. Bang! Summoning his great sword to his hand, he cleaved down and ripped open a portal in the space in front of him. Just as he was about to enter, black chains appeared behind him and restrained him. You refuse to meet me? Arya, explain yourself. He howled as his aura exploded out of his body. The realm around him started to shake and crack, but no response could be heard. Suddenly, a golden collar appeared around Rokarn's neck as he was brought to his knees. Gritting his teeth, he glared at the portal. Forced to close it, he threw his great sword into the distance. Taking deep breaths to calm himself, he sat back on his throne. Tapping his finger, he wondered what had happened for this scenario to occur. He assumed that the God-Slayer woke him up to fulfill their agreement, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Did Arya go rogue? He furrowed his brows before shaking his head. Enjoy the warmth of your light, Arya. Soon, you will burn. ####. Snapping her eyes open, Shiro quickly jumped back as a sword appeared in her hand. Narrowing her eyes at the corpse, she sighed in relief after seeing nothing happening. Did something happen? Nan Tian asked as he was also in a combat stance in case something went wrong. I suppose so. His perception was stronger than I expected. Found me in the network once I got closer to the center. Shiro scratched her hair while disposing the body on the table. He called me Godslayer, but he didn't mean my recent name. But rather it almost seems like he knows me, she said while sitting on the table and crossing her legs. He knew you? As Shiro, Kuromi, or as Nitri? Nan Tian asked curiously since Shiro did live 3 lifetimes now, one of which she remembered last year. Not sure. He talks as though I have already reached godhood before, which apparently King did since that's what Arya fears. Shiro clicked her tongue while leaning back and kicked her leg back and forth. How many lifetimes have I gone through now? I only remember 3 of them, but more are popping out of the woodworks. I lived as Nitri. Then I lived as Kuromi who knew nothing. Now I live as Shiro who knows about Nitri, but not Kuromi until later that year. Am I supposed to find out about a new incarnation every year I'm alive as Shiro? Shiro pouted as Nan Tian chuckled and pulled out some juice for her. Well, perhaps. Though if you have another past life as a god slayer, it'll make your future a bit easier seeing as though you've already done it before. Nan Tian smiled as Shiro nodded her head. True. I'm still concerned about Arya though. She's too abnormal. Like me but worse. She is able to access Tier 9 magic which I thought didn't exist, but clearly that's incorrect. She remembered a different me, and it was apparently her deepest fear. Shiro sighed while drinking the juice. You think it's to do with my destroyer class when I almost fell? Maybe. You did shoot all the way up to level 1000 when that happened. Maybe falling just pulls out all of your dormant potential, hence why you became the level 1000 destroyer. Maybe one of your previous lifetimes was acting as the destroyer of worlds. You certainly have the power for it. If I gave you a week, you could destroy Earth quite easily if you go all out. Maybe a week is too long. Nan Tian shrugged as Shiro agreed. After all, the system even forced Nyx to activate a barrier when she created the unstable void bomb. I suppose. By the way, I think we might want to reconsider our strategy. Rokarn is divinity rank 3. He's on par with Gaia and Nyx, not to mention the fact that he has the sub-divinity of chaos. With what I can do with some of chaos abilities, he won't be easy to kill, and unlike me, he doesn't have a timer. Shiro scratched her head. If she used her skill, she can advance herself to tier 8 for a short period and use the divinity of chaos, but she can only use it for a short period. In a battle between the two of them, this can only be used as a last resort paired with stacking her berserk skills to greatly increase her stats to put her on equal footing. And even then, it was no guarantee since his divinity is still more powerful. Aren't you able to summon some of the primordials here? While they might not be at full power, their assistance might help us tip the balance in our favor. Nan Tian suggested. Maybe. I don't want to summon them if possible, but if there's no avoiding it, then it'll have to do. Shiro nodded as she started to prepare a mech for Gaia. After all, Gaia mentioned that her combat power was weaker than most primordials and had to rely on supporting from the backlands. If she gave Gaia a mech, it'll allow her to support while also fighting on the front lines. As for the mech, it'll have to be something more powerful than the specialized units since a god can handle more pressure than mortals. It means that she can experiment a bit more and even use the crystals that she's been harvesting. So far, there's been no movement from the egg in the north and the scientists stationed there are confused, but the constant supply of crystals was a boon for them. But the moment she mentioned not wanting to summon the primordials if possible, Shiro watched as a notification appeared in front of her. Goddess Gaia states that she may not be able to help out much to her disappointment. There's been some movement in the divine realms that require their attention. As much as they would like to help, they might be short on time. She also states that your mother is involved. She wants to make sure she's safe along with some other gods. Reading this, Shiro blinked her eyes in surprise. Never mind. Seems like we can't count on the primordials. They're looking after my mom. Shiro shrugged. Pardon, something has happened in the divine realms, and my mom is involved. Since Gaia can't join, I presume it's something quite big. Shiro rephrased as Nantion furrowed her brows. I wonder what could be happening to make Gaia and the other primordials step in. Who knows? But whatever it is, it's going to be big. But enough about that. Let's go to sleep now. I want to wake up early and help out with some training to see which skills are compatible with the other party members, especially Revel and Cyrodiil, Shiro said as she jumped off the table and made her way back to her room. So what exactly do you need me to do? Revel asked while yawning. Scratching his hair, he seemed quite disheveled from playing games all night. I just want to see the effects of your storm when powered with my mana and see what I can do to avoid being killed accidentally. That way, when we need to use this tactic, we have prior knowledge rather than just winging it and hoping everything works out. Shiro explained with a shrug. Currently, they were in the middle of a grass plain that stretched on for as far as the eye could see. It was surprising to have this kind of landscape in the New Age, but Shiro knew that it was just disguised as such. Beneath the thin layers of grass were countless ravines that will reveal themselves with the slightest touch. The monsters that dwell within these ravines would kill you before repairing their trap, making it seem like nothing had happened. What about me then? Cyrodiil asked while sitting on a large rock that she ripped out from one of the ravines. You're after Revel. Shiro shrugged as Cyrodiil nodded and laid down before closing her eyes. Snapping her finger, a barrier appeared around her. Right then, now that she's also ready, let's get down to business. You can think of this as a little spar since we never actually fought one another. It's good for me to understand what you're capable of. Shiro smiled as Revel nodded his head. Taking a few steps back from Shiro, a fierce aura exploded out of his body as blue scales started to overlap his arms. Two horns protruded from his head along with rows of spikes down his spine. Unbuttoning his shirt and allowing it to hang on his waist, Shiro could see natural scale armor on his body. Well, this is rather new. I thought you could only go human or dragon form, Shiro said while crossing her arms. Well, having a large form is fun, but it's too big of a target. In a large army fight, I'm fine with that form. But against someone of your caliber, I'd rather condense my power. This human form might not be as defensive as my dragon form, but everything else has been drastically improved. Revel grinned while massaging his wrist. Lightning started to flicker around his arm as blue runes appeared on his body. Oh, and here I thought you were just playing games all day. Shiro chuckled. You're not wrong. But just because I'm playing games doesn't mean I can't think up of ways to improve. Revel shrugged before revealing a serious expression. Allow me to show you what I can do. Your move first. Shiro smiled as she swiped her hand down and summoned a nanotech sword along with a hand cannon. Asterisk bang. Just as she finished her sentence, Revel disappeared from sight and appeared in front of her with a lightning spear ready to pierce her body as she shifted her body and parried with the sword. Absorbing all of the mana, Shiro made sure to avoid using her own mana so that she could test out what he could do on his own. Relying on pure physical power, she adjusted her grip on the sword and disarmed him from his lightning spear. Letting go of her sword, she placed her finger against his chest before punching. The sudden transfer of force caused the scale armor around the chest to crack as Revel widened his eyes. However, he wasn't blown away. Asterisk crack. Opening the armor on his chest, his lips curled up into a grin as it wrapped around Shiro's arm, securing her in place. Looking at his eyes, Shiro could tell what he was thinking. I dare you to use mana. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro took a step forward. If her arm is stuck in his chest right now, that means he couldn't put his guard up properly. However, it also meant that she couldn't get out of his attack range. It was now a case of who could grasp this opportunity, and Shiro was faster. Stomping down, she slammed her spare hand into his stomach before twisted her palm, forcing her elbow to slam against Revel's jaw. Asterisk crack. Feeling his armor crack under her attack, her joy was short-lived as Revel was akin to a berserker who didn't feel any pain right now. Without caring for the wounds, lightning flashed across his body for a moment before a giant Tier 6 magic circle enveloped the two of them. A single second didn't even pass before lightning crashed down from the sky. Knowing that any use of mana would increase the intensity, Shiro didn't hesitate to cut her arm off and jumped away from Revel. Tracing her finger across the air around her, a portal opened up and swallowed her whole, protecting her from the lightning. Once the lightning settled, Shiro stepped out of her portal and glanced towards Revel, who was now holding the arm that she cut off. Even in that lightning storm, the arm was barely damaged. Even without mana enhancing your body, it can still withstand an attack that could kill a tier 6. Hell, I didn't even make you bleed. The only reason this is bloody is because you cut it off yourself. Revel shrugged while tossing the arm back. Just as he did this, it disappeared and was transformed into ambient mana. While I pride myself in elemental resistances, my physical defense is strong thanks to my armor, but anything magic-related is due to my innate nature. Shiro replied as she snapped her finger and healed her arm in an instant. I can continue with physical combat if you have more to show me. If not, we can move on to magic. I still have more to show. Can't be too much of a disappointment now, can I? Revel laughed as his suddenly cut off, slamming his fists together. The sound of lightning could be heard, but the clouds didn't change. Raising her eyebrow, Shiro glanced at Revel, who was charging at her. With each step, his aura would increase. By the time he was a few steps away from her, he seemed like an unstoppable lightning god that destroyed anything in his path. However, Shiro was composed. There was a technique that she was working on in order to deal with the suiciders that would detonate as long as there was mana. While she could use the no-mana zone, she needed a better method. Entering a stand, golden runes appeared on Shiro's arm as she flashed in front of Revel and grabbed the aura around him before condensing it into an orb and slammed it back into his body. While Revel was immune to lightning, he wasn't immune to pure energy. With the energy rampaging through his body, he kneeled down and coughed up blood. Soon, this pain disappeared as Shiro healed him with life fire. Did you make your last move slow so that I understood what was going on? Revel asked as he forced a smile. Yup, you can convert mana, but nothing higher. You can't convert it either if I was to change its shape into something else. You see this? This is celestial energy. Don't get it mixed up with divine energy, as divine energy is what is used by the gods, while celestial energy is a cheap replica, I suppose. By mixing the two together and converting the lightning around your body, I was able to find a loophole with your physique and send everything back at you. Your physique is strong against people that use mana, but it's limited against demigods that have already began to use divine energy. Rokarn has a divinity rank of 3. If he struck you, let's say you might meet a good friend of mine called Hades. Shiro chuckled as Revel sighed and scratched his head. My physique revolves around countering mana, lightning, and physical-based attacks with my innately powerful defense. In other areas, it's a little weak. Revel admitted honestly as Shiro nodded. Hence why I showed you this method. With how you fight, even without the assistance of someone else's mana, I think you're in a pretty good spot. We just need to find a way to cover your weakness, and celestial energy is perfect for you. You can't use mana due to your physique, but celestial energy comes from the soul. When I sent it through your body, I had already scanned you to see how your physique reacted, and it was rather adaptive. If not, you would probably be convulsing on the ground and spasming rather than just coughing up blood. Shiro shrugged as Revel's smile twitched. She was more than happy to let him suffer such a strong attack to check his compatibility when there were better ways of testing this. Ones that didn't leave him convulsing on the floor. What? Everyone else was training using the harsh method. No one in a fight will just let you figure out a counter while they're waiting. You need to try to adapt in a situation where they're kicking the sh*t out of you. Shiro shrugged, but Nimue could tell that it was 60% bullsh*ting, 20% serious and 20% sadistic intent. Hesitantly nodding his head, Revel wondered what kind of training he'll need to do in order to use this celestial energy that Shiro mentioned. Sensing Shiro approaching her, Cyrodiil opened her eyes and yawned. Finished, she asked as she knew that Shiro was training with Revel. Not quite, but he can't continue, so we'll move on to your training. Shiro smiled as Cyrodiil blinked her eyes in confusion. Can't continue? Did he have something to do? She asked, but Shiro shook her head. Pointing behind her, Shiro stepped aside so that Cyrodiil could see Revel's state. Rubbing her eyes to make sure she wasn't dreaming, Cyrodiil could see Revel's beaten-up body twitching in a crater while the scenery around him was being repaired. What happened to him? He's just trying to learn how to use a new form of energy right now. Something similar to mana. He's only twitching because I'm running a bunch of information through his brain while healing him. Pretty sure if it was someone else, they would have their brain melted by now. He's only holding on because of his innate healing and my life fire. Shiro shrugged while sitting down. Right? So what do you have in store for me then? Cyrodiil asked curiously because Shiro had mentioned that this was something she needed to learn. What's in store for you? Well, I'll leave most of the training a secret for now. But let me ask you a question. You've reached level 1000 before, right? Shiro asked as Cyrodiil nodded. I did. What about it? Did you ever break through to the next stage and attain a divinity? Well, kind of. I never needed to reach that stage to be fair. You can defeat most queens and empresses by just reaching the peak of mortal standards, which is level 1000. The remaining queens and empresses required you to have a great deal of fighting experience and quick thinking. None of them needed you to be tier 7 to kill them. I have gained physiques that were equal to demigods, but never really used what you call divine energy. Cyrodiil admitted as this garden's new age was highly abnormal. If that wasn't the case, then Shiro would have been fine by now and would have probably won with relative ease. So your body probably experienced divine energy before with your physique. You had a passive adaptive defense, right? Shiro asked as Cyrodiil nodded her head. I only have the lesser version right now. It'll be upgraded in the future. Why, you ask? Ho ho. Well, for you see, if I pump you with enough divine energy, you'll get a feel for the energy as well as gaining a resistance. No? It'll help out when we fight Rokarn. Shiro smiled as golden runes lit up on her arm. So, basically I'm going to hit the crap out of you until you gain a resistance. Hearing this, Cyrodiil narrowed her eyes. Of course, you can fight back. It's a spar with the additional benefits of you getting divine energy resistance. Plus, you might even get an idea on how to obtain it for yourself. Shiro chuckled as Cyrodiil nodded her head. Cracking her knuckles, she looked at Shiro. Ready when you are. Asterisk, bang. Without hesitation, Shiro slammed her fist into Cyrodiil's chest as golden runes lit up and launched her into the distance. Stomping down, Shiro chased after her as a sea of flames appeared in her face. Curling her lips into a smile, Shiro dashed into the flames without fear. After all, thanks to Adi, she has an immunity to flames below demigod level. Bursting out of the flames, Shiro's fists were wrapped with a golden light as Cyrodiil was surprised that her flames did nothing. Pulling her arm back, she punched towards Shiro as she did the same. Asterisk, bang. Feeling her arm ache from the force of her punch, Cyrodiil winced slightly as the force pushed her towards the ground. Clasping her hands together, Shiro created a tier 7 magic circle in the sky, creating a portal to space. All of the satellites could be seen as each of them slowly charged up an attack. Summoning a bow into her hands, Shiro narrowed her eyes and carved golden runes onto the surface before pulling back. Seeing this, Cyrodiil furrowed her brows. Flames erupted from her body as her body transformed into a flaming dragon. Opening her mouth, a condensed beam of energy erupted out and shot towards Shiro. However, a hexagonal barrier appeared around Shiro and dispersed the energy. Sorry, but this barrier was based on Revel's unique physique. I can't convert all of the mana and energy, but it does absorb roughly 20% of what you fire at me. Shiro smiled as she let go of the bowstrings. Asterisk, boom. Widening her eyes, Cyrodiil didn't know what to say as the sky was now filled with a myriad of attacks, all aimed towards her. Gritting her teeth, the flames on her body extinguished just before the blasts reached her. Asterisk, bang. Closing the portal, Shiro waved her hand and cleared the dust. Standing in a crater was a wingless dragon that had black scales all over its body. Seeing how her attack barely harmed Cyrodiil, Shiro raised her eyebrow in surprise. Black Crystal Dragon. Black crystal was the hardest material in my world. It was highly resistant to all forms of damage, especially mana. Due to a few items and skills, I was able to integrate some of the crystal into my body, creating a defensive dragon form. As the Empress of Dragons, it wouldn't make sense for me to only have one dragon form after all. However, this form does have a small drawback. My movements dull once I change forms as I need to clear the crystals, and my speed is heavily decreased. It's only really good for defending against an attack that I can't dodge. Cyrodiil explained as Shiro nodded her head. You want some time to recover, or keep going? Keep going. My enemies won't give me time to recover after all. Cyrodiil smiled as the crystals started to shatter. Transforming herself into a green dragon with blue lights under each scale, she activated a tier 6 magic circle. Suddenly, vines shot out of the ground as Shiro was forced to dive down to dodge them. She didn't know what they did, but they gave her a bad feeling. Smart move. These are devil vines. Once they latch onto you, They plant a seed which drains your mana and health and transfer them to me. The more seeds that are planted in your body, the stronger the absorption. Well, that's certainly helpful to know. Let's try this then. Shiro smiled as flames started to flicker on her fingertips. Activating her soul maiden skill, fire wrapped around her body. A black and red dress enveloped her body as the vines that were close to her instantly turned to ash. One by one, orbs of fire appeared near her as they orbited around Shiro. Narrowing her eyes, Cyrodiil could see that they were butterflies by their wings were on fire constantly. Clear are these vines, Shiro ordered with a smile. Asterisk, boom. Suddenly, all of the butterflies erupted with more energy as they rushed towards the vines. In mere seconds, an entire vine would be dried up and crumbled to ash while all of the butterflies charged towards Cyrodiil. Quickly backing off, she transformed once more to deal with this new threat. Sprouting another pair of wings on her back, Cyrodiil's new form was a serpent with 2 sets of wings. Disappearing from her spot, her speed increased dramatically as the butterflies lost their target. Waving her finger for them to come back to her, Shiro had a smile on her face. Dismissing her form, she closed her eyes as golden runes appeared on her arms. Opening her eyes once more, the purple runes were now lit up. Activating her skill, Time Flux, a sword appeared in her hand as golden runes lit up along the blade. Dashing forward, the golden runes slowly turned to a deep red. A pulse of energy erupted out of the sword as the world seemed to stop in Shiro's eyes. Spotting Cyrodiil circling above her, Shiro didn't waste any time and jumped up. For Kronos, she needed to use 2 pulses to halt his time since he was a god. But for anyone below god level, 1 pulse should do the trick. Flickering behind Cyrodiil, time started to resume as she swung her sword against Cyrodiil's back. Feeling the sudden spike of pain in her back, Cyrodiil widened her eyes since she was sure that she had her eyes on Shiro. To her, she just suddenly disappeared, and the next thing she knew, her back was now bleeding. The hell was that? Cyrodiil asked as she backed off from Shiro. A skill of mine. It's something I developed with the god of time. Essentially, for a short while, at the low cost of 25% of my divine energy and 80% of my mana, I can stop time and do whatever I want. Shiro smiled. The F***CK. You can stop time? Cyrodiil asked in disbelief as Shiro nodded her head. Pausing for a moment, Shiro smiled. Oh, would you look at that? I've already recovered 20% of my mana. If I wait a bit longer, I'll get it all back. Ready to keep going? I still need to smack you with divine energy some more. Shiro asked as golden runes lit up on her arm. Wiping the blood from her lips, Cyrodiil continued to dodge without being able to fight back, as Shiro constantly had a barrier around her that allowed her to absorb the mana. Everything I throw at her is being thrown back even harder than before. Plus, she's not exactly letting me have a relaxing time either. Cyrodiil thought with a frown, while quickly raising her arm to protect her head. Asterisk bang. Crack. Feeling her bone fracture from the hit, Cyrodiil widened her eyes as she noticed something. The longer this fight went on, the stronger Shiro's hits became. It's as though all of the mana that she's absorbed is used to reinforce her body and empower her attacks. However, there wasn't anything she could do about it since she only knew how to use mana. What's wrong, Cyrodiil? Don't tell me that's it. Are you nothing but a punching bag? Are you not an empress who has won multiple new ages? Show me the power that allowed you to win. Shiro asked as her face was cold. Slamming her hands together, a Tier 7 magic circle exploded out as Cyrodiil felt danger from all around her. Gritting her teeth, she activated another dragon form as black lightning erupted around her. Her form started to enlarge as black and red scales covered her body. Rearing her head back, she let out a bellowing roar as the land tore itself apart. Black flames shot out of the ground and withered the landscape. Seeing this, Shiro scoffed. Gaia would be upset at your actions, she said while snapping her fingers. Her hair suddenly turned green as an emerald dress covered her body. Waving her finger, large trees comparable to the world tree that the elves worshipped sprouted from the ashes. Shaking their leaves, a green aura descended to the land as all of the flames disappeared and the landscape was rejuvenated. Seeing this, Cyrodiil narrowed her eyes and sent black spikes in all directions before jumping up into the sky. Opening a path for herself, her black and red scales started to transform as her form started to shrink. Finally getting serious, Shiro curled the corner of her lips up into a smile as she snapped her fingers. Several streaks of lightning appeared around her as each streak was actually made up of tiny golden runes. Pointing at Cyrodiil, Shiro narrowed her eyes and activated the spell. Asterisk, boom. Seeing the lightning behind her, Cyrodiil gritted her teeth and activated a Tier 6 spell of her own. *T. It's not fast enough. Widening her eyes, she braced herself for impact. Gah! Feeling the shock through her body, Cyrodiil couldn't help but scream out in pain as her transformation was forcefully cancelled. Transforming a part of her arm to that of a lightning dragon, she attempted to remove the lightning from her body. However, the moment she grabbed the lightning, it started to run rampant up her arm, ripping it apart in the process. Looking at the lightning, she decided to keep holding it despite the damage, allowing it to continue to damage her body. She wanted to let her body adapt to this damage and overcome it. Slowly, a white energy started to wrap around her body while red markings crawled across the surface of this white shell. Little by little, her entire body was now nothing but red. Her hair disappeared into this strange energy as she seemed like she was on fire, but in slow motion. Moving her hand, this energy seemed to trail behind her ever so slightly. Not enough to separate from her, but enough to see a trail. Adaptation acquired. A simple notification told her that this was how her body adapted to fight against this form of energy. Looking at the lightning in her hands that was now slowly being absorbed, she could feel a new source of energy, one that was many times more powerful than mana. Seems like our little spar has finally shown some results, Shrio said as she floated near Cyrodiil in her new form. Wanting to speak, Cyrodiil opened her mouth, but was unable to let out her voice. It was a strange feeling, power that was hard to control. It was either very slow or at top speed. She figured that once she got used to this form, she'll be able to control the speed, but right now, that was not the case. Seems like you're mute for now. Nod your head once if you want to keep fighting. Shiro smiled as Cyrodiil nodded her head. Just as Shiro was about to attack, she widened her eyes, seeing a red fist in front of her face. Quickly tilting her head to the side, she barely managed to dodge as the speed caused a small cut on her face. With how strong her body was now, leaving a wound was near impossible unless she did it herself. For Cyrodiil to be able to harm her, this meant that her new form had quite the potential. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro healed up the cut. Harming my face like that, even though we're sparing, that'll cost you. Shiro chuckled as she flickered from her spot. Even though Cyrodiil was fast, Shiro could upgrade her speed as well. Appearing behind her, Shiro clenched her fist as golden runes appeared, but before she could punch, Cyrodiil had already constructed a Tier 6 magic circle that was trying to ascend into the realm of Tier 7. Allowing the spell to activate, Shiro noticed that she was brought to a different realm. In this place, everything seemed to be flipped. The ground was always above them, no matter how they tried to flip, while the sky was beneath them. The colors in this realm were dull, simple black and white. Standing in the center was Cyrodiil, who was covered by a red energy that stood out compared to her surroundings. When adapting to a type of element or power, you go for the inverse, a natural counter so that the two cancels out. If you want to ignore fire, you use water. Do you think Cyrodiil obtained the opposite of divine energy? Something that is the opposite of what the gods use? Nimue asked as the energy that was slowly radiating from Cyrodiil was a little creepy. For her, who was closely tied to mana and divine energy, it felt repulsive. Perhaps, Shiro replied as she felt the same. It was a feeling that reminded her of Niphim, pure corruption, one that appears when they fall. But Cyrodiil felt slightly different. When people fall, there is a sense that they've already walked past the line. But Cyrodiil was balancing in the middle, so falling means you gain access to the corruption that counters gods. Could explain how the Godslayer fell first before killing gods, Shiro thought to herself as she tried to activate divine energy in this realm. However, the moment she did, a black energy washed over the entire world as Shiro felt countless pairs of eyes locking onto her body. The moment she snapped out of it, there was a black and white dragon behind her that was about to bite her in half. Immediately summoning Sylvanes to her side, she cut the dragon in half. What the hell was that? Shiro thought with a frown. From the corpse of the dragon, two long arms of black goo sprouted out and reached towards her. Furrowing her brows, Shiro activated a barrier around her that blocked out the corruption. Splattering against the surface of her barrier, each drop of the liquid would transform into something else as Cyrodiil dashed towards Shiro at top speed. Activating her Soul Maiden form, Shiro chose ice as her element and breathed out a mouthful of cold mist. Clasping her hands together, a pulse of energy exploded out in an attempt to freeze the world, but the moment she tried, the strength of the corruption would only grow stronger. Clicking her tongue, Shiro grabbed Sylvanes and swung towards Cyrodiil. Just before her blade could reach Cyrodiil, a fracture appeared on the red energy covering her body. Asterisk ping. Shattering apart like ice, Cyrodiil's body fell forward as Shiro quickly caught her. Looking around her, Shiro noticed that they were now back on Earth. The corruption disappeared, and color returned to the world. Glancing down at the unconscious Cyrodiil, Shiro smiled helplessly while floating down to recover Revel's body. One training session, two unconscious beings. One's learning how to use celestial energy, and the other has tapped into the power of Fallen but didn't fall. Nimue sighed as Shiro shrugged. Well, we'll need all the strength we can get. I'm fine with Revel, but Cyrodiil's power might need to be looked into. Shiro replied as Nimue nodded her head. So what do you think about Cyrodiil's power? She's tenacious. Her adaptation and healing power makes it hard to keep her down. Neither of us showed all our cards since doing so would weaken us before the big fight, but it'll definitely be a slight struggle. Shiro admitted since she was essentially saying that Cyrodiil could probably suppress a god like the Raven. Killing was a different matter since she didn't have anything to kill a god. Though, with her new power, this might change. Bringing the both of them back to the city, Shiro stretched her body and placed them in the medical bay. Seeing this familiar room, Shiro couldn't help but look back at the bed that she was in while she was recovering from the loss of Icilia. Saying nothing, Shiro shook her head and thought about something else. How was the training? Did they get the results that you wanted? A voice rang out as Shiro smiled and glanced behind her. Seeing Nantion leaning by the door, Shiro nodded her head. Yeah, I did. Revel seemed to be making good progress towards using celestial energy, and Cyrodiil obtained something outside of our expectations. We tried to let her use divine energy through adaptation. However, she obtained the direct opposite instead. She obtained energy similar to the Fallen, but she hasn't crossed the line of no return yet. Shiro explained as Nantion raised his eyebrows and glanced towards Cyrodiil. Does that mean there's a way for her to use the corruption from becoming Fallen without the risks? I'm not sure about it being free of risks, but so far it seems like it has no drawbacks except for the fact that it pushes the physical body to the limit. Shiro replied while scratching her head. That's definitely worth looking into then. Nantion said while pulling out the tablet. But while you were training those two, I've collected some basic combat data on everyone that will be joining the raid. New moves, combos, skills, and techniques are all recorded here. There's a high chance that they'll figure something out when they fight, but I've pretty much collected everything now. Nantion shrugged as he handed the tablet to Shiro. Receiving the tablet, Shiro started to read the information and noted everything down in her mind. With everything being recorded here, it will definitely be more beneficial for her dad and Li Jian to lead the charge since everyone will get a buff thanks to their skills, passives, and title bonuses. As for everyone else, she can pretty much let them do whatever they want during the raid. They didn't need to be directed since there wasn't anything they needed to keep in mind. At least that's what it seems so far. They just needed to kill everything in sight. Once she finished reading the document, Shiro handed the tablet back to Nantion. Anything that I need to adjust? Nantion asked, but Shiro shook her head. Now everything seems pretty much sorted. I'll be training Cyrodiil and Revel for the next few days. We should have enough time for them to reach the stage of being able to use their powers confidently. The only problem I'm worried about is Rokarn's army. They've already started invading, so while we're training, they could be destroying the rest of the world. Of course, my satellites can pick them up, but if I'm being honest, I'd rather try to deal with all of them before they attack. Shiro admitted as Nantion nodded. If you want, I can try to monitor them from the command center. I should be able to get some footage of the entire Earth using your satellites. Nantion suggested. Just as Shiro was about to nod, she paused and furrowed her brows. No need. It seems like they're coming to us instead, Shiro said as her face was cold. Disappearing from her spot, she appeared above Asharia, standing just outside the barrier protecting her city. She could see Tier 7 magic circles appear as portals surrounded the area. Slowly, she could see monsters crawling out of the portals. A few of them matched the description that Cyrodiil had provided earlier. However, there were a few that felt stronger to Shiro. They're probably the Berserker units. Shiro thought to herself. One by one, they all looked towards her as Shiro snapped her finger. I apologize, but Asharia is full right now. Feel free to come back another day or face the consequences. Shiro shouted out as another barrier appeared over the first barrier. Seeing that none of them replied and continued to walk towards her, Shiro sighed. Well, that's no fun. Death it is then, she said while waving her hand. Suddenly, Thousands upon thousands of turrets appeared all around Acharya as they locked onto the closest targets. Without hesitation, Shiro commanded all of them to fire as a wave of bullets shot out, shredding apart the suiciders that served as their front line. Seeing the bodies swell up and bulge, Shiro slammed her hand down, causing a third barrier to appear and expand outwards. Once the barrier came into contact with the suiciders that were about to explode, they suddenly deflated. Neon blue energy could be seen pulsing through the hexagonal markings of the barrier, towards the center where Acharya was located before being funneled into the turrets, empowering their next shot. The third barrier that pulsed out was not to block the attack, but to absorb. Since the suiciders suck in energy so that they can explode, it was essentially a more volatile nanotech mana coil that she used in most of her weapons and large constructs. So if the theory was right, she could just redirect everything the way she wanted, and they would actually be doing her a favor. Seeing the confusion on their faces after the suiciders didn't explode, Shiro couldn't help but chuckle before sending the second volley of bullets. Before it could reach the next row of enemies, heavily armored units jumped in front of them and managed to block the volley, scattering the bullets behind them. Seeing that they managed to block, Shiro was rather impressed and snapped her fingers, upgrading the guns ever so slightly so that Shiro could test out how much they could defend against. She fired the third volley, then the fourth, fifth, and so on. It wasn't that the enemy didn't try to fight back, but all the attacks that they shot towards Shiro would be weakened then blocked. Weakened because they were in her territory and blocked by her barriers. Since they were fighting near Acharya, all of the units were weakened by roughly 50% overall. With them not even being able to muster up 50% of their combat power, it was only natural that Shiro could dominate them easily. Of course, even if they were at full power, Shiro wouldn't be too troubled, automating the guns to slowly increase in strength if she couldn't kill the front line. Watching the army getting killed easily, Shiro didn't worry too much about their suicidal nature since all of them were basically golems that serve Rokarn. Letting the guns fight, Shiro started to analyze the portal that brought them here. Once she got close enough, she reached out towards it, but the portal disappeared. Shutting off immediately, Shiro could see that some of the units were cut in half since they weren't able to escape in time. Furrowing her brows, Shiro wasn't able to track it back to an origin point since there was something blocking it. Looking around her, she could see that all of the portals were closing one after the other, as though whoever made these portals didn't want Shiro to study them. Do you think they made it so that it's hard for you to track it back to them? While Rokarn may control the units, someone else might control the teleport portals and other miscellaneous jobs. Nimue asked as Shiro shrugged. Not sure, but I think I should clear this battlefield. With them being weakened, I have a rough idea on how each unit can be killed along with how resilient they are without being in my domain. Anyways, let's go with the satellites so that I can deal with them all quickly. Shiro replied while clapping her hand once. Adjusting the focusing lens of the satellites, Shiro did a quick simulation of the effects before activating the satellites. Suddenly, hundreds of blinking lights appeared in the sky as the monsters that noticed it quickly notified the others, but it was too late. In a split second, hundreds of pillars descended from the skies, decimating the land below and anything caught in between. Once the light settled down, only craters and burnt land remained. There was not a single sign of the units that stood there previously. With the small invasion now pushed back, Shiro wanted to see how much EXP she got in total for that, but she didn't even get a single level, never mind multiple. Clicking her tongue in annoyance, Shiro had to admit that the EXP gain was awful for these units, and that literally anything else might be faster. Shaking her head for now, she activated one of Acharya's escape abilities and opened a portal large enough for Acharya to travel through. Soon, no signs of this city ever being here could be seen, and the area was repaired thanks to Shiro's magic. Meanwhile, Rokarn was keeping an eye on what had just happened, didn't say a single word. He was silently contemplating his options he had. Seeing her power, he couldn't help but furrow his brows. It was a little different than what he remembered. It was less destructive, a disappointment. Remembering her power back then, Rokarn felt his heart beat in nervousness. Can she even fulfill the promise now? He thought to himself before closing his eyes. Back then, he was just a low-tier god of death. But after meeting her, he later became the demigod of chaos and destruction. ####. Crashing against the ground, a young man rolled a few times before jumping back on his feet. He wore a single metal gauntlet that protected his right arm, a tattered waist cloth, a pair of pants, and a pair of boots. The man had no shirt on, revealing his muscles that are decorated with black tattoos. The tattoos themselves mostly resembled flames that curled around his body without a start or end. Strangely enough, this tattoo would always seem different to the eyes. Scratching his black hair, the young man looked around him and furrowed his brows in confusion. Where am I now? I thought the portal should have taken me to the closest temple of worship, he muttered while stretching his body. Dusting the dirt away, he started to explore this place so that he could guess where he was. The place that he had arrived in was akin to a private garden. Exotic plants, herbs, and carefully cultivated fruit trees could be spotted as white marbled archways decorated the path. Sending his senses out, he noticed that it was blocked by a small barrier of sorts. Just as he was about to break past this barrier, he felt the core of a fruit hit him on the head. Furrowing his brows, he looked towards the direction of where the core came from and paused in surprise. Sitting on top of a white archway was a white-haired woman who had a charming smile on her face. Her ruby eyes stared at him while she placed a finger over her lips. Don't break that barrier now. If you do, you'll alert them, the young woman warned with a small chuckle. She wore a white dress with gold markings and small jewelries such as bracelets and necklaces. Jumping down from the archway, she snapped her finger and activated a small spell. Slowly, a vine appeared on the closest tree and brought 2 fruits to her. I don't know how you got here, but there aren't many who can sneak into this garden without notice. Considering your aura had your strength, you must have gotten here by coincidence. Little demigod, take this fruit as a reward and go back to where you come from. She smiled while throwing a fruit towards the young man. Catching it, he raised an eyebrow before looking at the fruit. Taking a bite, he could feel divine energy flow through his body and enhance his physique to the next level. Blinking his eyes in surprise, he looked back at the woman who was now walking away. Hey, wait, who are you? He called out while chasing after her. It's not important. It's not like I'll be seeing you again. Also, don't be greedy for the other fruits. If you try to pick them without the right technique, you'll be fried. The woman laughed while shuddering at the last thought, indicating that she had failed before. Now then, let me track your divinity back to the right place. She smiled. Waving her finger, a tether appeared from his chest and started to thread through the realms. Suddenly, he felt a tug and knew that he was about to be dragged away. Can you at least tell me your name? He asked as the woman contemplated for a moment. Sure, if you tell me yours. She smiled. Rokarn, demigod of death. Now what about you? PFT, I never said I'll follow through with that promise. Goodbye, little demigod. The woman laughed as she waved her fingers. Asterisk bang. Feeling the tether drag him away, Rokarn couldn't do anything as he was forced out of the garden. By the time he realized where he was, the garden was no longer in sight, nor was that woman. Sitting on his throne, Rokarn looked down at the fruit in his hand and was silent. Finishing the fruit, he could clearly feel his body become stronger than ever. His divinity over death was increased to the next level, and now he was on par with most gods who also have a divinity level of 2. Wondering about what kind of garden that was, he couldn't help but lick his lips in greed. If he could get another fruit, he might gain strength equal to the primordials. For the next few years, he continuously tried to enter that garden again, using the energy of the fruit as a guide. However, no matter what he did, that connection never formed. He even started to neglect his duties as a demigod of death, much to his sister's anger, but he didn't care. There were more important matters at hand. Plus, it wasn't as though he's the only demigod of death. Others can fill for him. Placing down his research on the table, he decided to step out for a bit. After so many years of no progress, there wasn't much else for him to do. Grabbing a black jacket for himself, Rokarn stepped out of his temple and glanced at the Hell's Cape of his domain. Remembering the garden, he had the urge to redecorate this place, but that was an impossibility. Life will wither and die in his domain. Shaking his head, he opened a portal to the divine realms. This is where most of the gods would gather and discuss matters with the mortal world. Right now, the new age will be happening soon, so the gods are trying to make alliances with one another so that they could have a better chance at keeping their position once the new age is over. Of course, if they could get a promotion, then that's more than welcome. Pulling up his hood, his figure seemed to blend in with the environment as no one noticed him. The Divine Realms was a neutral zone where most gods are not able to use their abilities against one another unless both sides consented to it. It was a rule put in place by the system, and so far, none of the gods have been able to break that. Looking around, he could see the chosen ones of each god running a small store of sorts, selling resources that might be beneficial to other gods. Ignoring this, he continued to walk around so that he could find some research on portals and realm travel. But more than that, he wanted to get some information. If his memory serves him right, there should be an information broker not far from his location. The broker was a god who excelled in information gathering but had little to no combat power. ####. Feeling someone approach his room, Rokarn stopped thinking about the past and opened his eyes. Waving his hand, the door to his throne room opened as one of his commanders could be seen kneeling respectfully. "Master, the army is ready. Are we not going to invade yet?" he asked as Rokarn narrowed his eyes. "No, we will invade at the promised time. Quell the army. If they are anxious, they may go ahead of time, but anyone who does can forget about coming back," Rokarn said as the commander nodded his head before leaving. Shutting the door, Rokarn teleported out of his throne room and looked towards Earth. Seeing the countless satellites that surrounded the planet, he couldn't help but wonder about what had happened for her divinity to become so weak. It was now nothing but a shadow of its former self, and he wasn't sure if she could even fulfill their promise anymore. If she couldn't, then he can only continue to drift along the passage of time, chained by the system and hailed as the world ender and bringer of chaos. Reaching into his inventory, he pulled out a set of armor that has been shattered to pieces. This was the result of what the Godslayer had done with a single attack. One move shattered the defenses of a rainbow plus grade armor that was described as indestructible by the system. She had bypassed the threshold and shattered this armor to pieces. Remembering the power she held in his memories, Rokarn felt anger boil up in his heart as he knew Arya probably did something to her. This was not the person that he knew. After Cyrodiil and Revel woke up, Shiro created a training room for the both of them. It was the same one that she had made for Glenn, but this time the energy consumption was much higher than expected since it was trying to contain two beings that were near the peak of Tier 6. However, after researching the crystals, Shiro was now able to link these rooms with her anchor so that it didn't require her to fuel everything by herself. Creating an avatar to help Revel while she helped Cyrodiil, Shiro proceeded to train the both of them at the same time, while Nantion helped with the others in preparation for the raid. "Mom, when can I get a new body?" a faint silhouette asked as Arya glanced towards her. "Soon. Your father is still looking for a suitable body for you. You know your soul is unique. If you don't find one that's suitable, then you'll destroy that body in seconds," Arya explained as the girl pouted and threw herself on the bed. Arg, if only she didn't change the course of history. Why was she even allowed to do that? I had found the perfect body in that dungeon, she complained as Arya walked over and patted her head. "Well, if you could find it in the dungeon, then so can everyone else. Not a lot of people would think to interfere with you like this. Plus, she has special system privileges that allow her to counter your actions should you try to interfere with it," Arya explained. "But she's only a lowly Tier 2 at the time. Not always. She was stronger in the past." Arya shook her head. "Then can we kill her and take my body back?" "No, you cannot kill her." "Well, it's more like you're not allowed to kill her. Why do you think me and your father has been keeping her weak all this time?" Arya reminded as the girl sat up. "Can you at least tell me why we can't kill her? With your power, you should be able to kill her without too much trouble." "I can, but it's important that she stays alive. It doesn't matter how powerful she is, as long as she is alive. As for telling you why it's important for her to stay alive, it's not the time yet. Just know that what I'm doing is for the good of the world," Arya reassured before standing up and leaving the room. Making her way to Ikari's room, she opened it and saw him trying to suppress the wound while preparing for their next moves. "Do you need help?" Arya asked, but Ikari shook his head. "No, it's fine. The pain should fade after a bit. Whatever it was that hurt me seems to be trying to consume me again. It's getting stronger." Ikari frowned while putting on his shirt. "All right. Anyways, I wanted to tell you that the demigod Rokarn seems to be making his move now. The invasion into the garden will start soon once the barriers have weakened enough. Should we take this chance to grab Lysandra so that our daughter can get her body back?" Arya asked as Ikari thought about it for a moment. "Perhaps, but it depends on the restrictions the system has in place. You know that it's changing all the time. The stronger she becomes, the harder it is to interfere." Ikari sighed as Arya nodded her head. "I didn't think she would come into contact with Rokarn again. He knows I've done something. If it wasn't for the system, he might try and help her. To get to Earth, we'll need to weaken the restrictions, which means Rokarn gets some degree of freedom. Things could go south if that happens. We might have to give up on getting Lysandra's body for now," Arya thought to herself before opening her mouth. If we weaken the system's restrictions and open a path to Earth, there's a chance that she'll summon the primordial gods to help her. You've seen how much of a problem they caused last time when she was injured by the Watchman. I'm afraid that if we were to go, it wouldn't be favorable to us. Plus, she's slain a god, which means the thing that harmed you can consume our core. Arya said as Ikari clenched his fist. How long do you think our daughter can last without her body? Her soul is slowly weakening without a body, and we only found one that was compatible out of billions. Ikari asked as Arya sighed. We can try again once the second half of the new age arrives. Talking to Arya some more, Ikari watched as she left the room. Looking at himself in the mirror, he sighed wearily. He was tired. His hatred for Nitri burned bright, but it was starting to dim. His world had already been destroyed after he killed Nitri the first time. He had tried everything he could to turn back time and save everyone, but it was useless. He no longer had a reason to hate her, as he caused the very thing he feared, the destruction of his world. However, he had a new goal, his daughter. As long as he can find a suitable body for her, he was okay with giving up his hatred. But knowing Nitri, she would never let Lysandra give up her body. Asking her for Lysandra's body is off the table. Perhaps she can make a body suitable for Eris with her nanobots. Ikari thought to himself, but the chances were low. After all, she hated him. She hated him for killing her, betraying her trust, and doing everything in his power to make sure she doesn't come back stronger than ever. He was even involved in stopping the primordials from killing the Watchman. At this point, the chances of him receiving help from her was practically zero. But he will give it a try the next time he sees her. If Eris can live, then he'll be happy. But if she refuses to help Eris, then he will have to fight her as usual. Try to kill her, then take Lysandra's body for Eris. Even if he no longer has a reason to fight her on a personal level, the fact that she was about to become the destroyer was worrisome. ####. After leaving the room, Arya had a cold expression. She could clearly tell that Ikari was starting to lose his edge now that Eris was reaching her limit. Unlike her, he couldn't give up on Eris. I need to give him another push, she thought to herself while making her way back. Suddenly, she felt pain on her chest as it forced her to kneel down. Gritting her teeth, metal started to pierce her skin and eat away at her flesh. Activating a Tier 8 magic circle, she healed the wound and stood back up. She understood that her recent use of Tier 9 magic might have stimulated the dormant power, causing it to go berserk at times. Thankfully, the effects were small for now. I need to try and reset her strength soon. If she becomes stronger, this will be problematic. Arya narrowed her eyes. ###. How do the barriers look right now? Cyrodiil asked as they were currently having a break. It's intact. The one of the moon is slowly corroding away, as you can see. My estimate right now is that it'll be gone by the end of the week. Shiro replied while projecting a hologram of the moon. Knowing Rokarn's strength and the strength of his army, they should be able to break this apart. Why are they waiting? Cyrodiil asked as this was strange. In the previous gardens, Rokarn would invade the moment he could rather than giving this much time for them to train. Who knows? But apparently he knew me before, so that might be why. Perhaps he's waiting for something to happen before the promised time. Shiro guessed as Cyrodiil nodded her head. Maybe. Well, regardless, are you ready? Shiro asked as she snapped her fingers. Suddenly, several staves appeared around her as Cyrodiil shivered. Rather than using swords, they were now literally beating the divine energy into her. Resuming her training with Cyrodiil, Shiro's mind would occasionally wander to Rokarn and what he had told her. The fact that Arya's deepest fear was her, and that Rokarn knew who she was before. Did Arya corrupt Ikari so that she could stop me? I'm apparently her biggest fear, so it would make sense for her to do that. In the end, it didn't matter if they knew her or not. She had a clear goal: stop the destruction of Earth by killing Rokarn and kill both Ikari and Arya for what they've done to her. Even if Ikari was corrupted by Arya, it didn't wipe out the crimes that he committed. My future self told me that I would kill Ikari, which was reassuring. But she never said anything about Arya. Do you think it was because the system was no longer around? Error's been a large part of why you could kill a god, since it targets their core. Sure, you have other ways of reaching that, but so far, error has been the most effective. Nimue asked as Shiro nodded her head. Perhaps, error was something given by the system. Until I can simulate his properties using my own power, it'll be hard for me to kill a god once the system disappears. To be fair, I still don't know how I did that. After all, it's not like I can conjure up a terminal that shuts down the system. Who knows? There's no doubt a source of the system. It's just a matter of finding it. Plus, you have Hermes' blessing, don't you? As long as you have a clear understanding of the location, you can teleport to it. Nimue reminded. True. Thinking about this, Shiro made a note in her mind. She had to keep the system around until she killed Arya so that her main threat would be gone. While everyone was training, Shiro was standing in a space station that she had created using the satellites. Observing the moon, she could see the growing army through the holes of the barrier. Most of them didn't pose a threat to her, but with these numbers, even she had to admit that it'll be hard to fight Rokarn in these conditions. The best-case scenario would be to fight Rokarn without any interference from the army. At least that way, we can focus on killing him. Shiro thought to herself, well, there's killing him and him killing us. I'll be honest, I'm still not sure if anyone below level 800 should join this raid. From what we've seen, Rokarn is a fighter. His attack is going to be much higher than what they can handle. If he could push back primordials, think about what he can do to people who aren't even tier 7. Nimue warned as Shiro nodded her head. I know, I've taken that into account. Why do you think I've been developing this? Shiro smiled while gesturing towards a crystal that was hovering in the center of the space station. It was something she had been developing as a backup just in case the fight was much harder than what she had expected. To her, the most powerful skill in her arsenal was not all of the offensive boosts. It was not the large-scale spells, nor was it the control over soul. Instead, it was grace, the spell that allows her to keep everyone alive, give them boosts to defense, and reduce the damage they take. They were a heavily offensive team, so now they just needed some defense and support. Without Madison being here, Cyrodiil and Revel can act as tanks, but they were still primarily offensive fighters. For support, there was only Sylvia. But by having Grace, she is able to help out both roles and balance things out a little. As for the crystal in the middle of the room, it was her latest research. A hybrid of her anchor, skill chips, and the strange crystal from the north. Since her anchor was closely tied to her, she figured that she was able to apply some of her skills to the anchor. However, the skills that were compatible was limited in number. Offensive skills that launch an attack or defend won't activate, but buffs and healing skills like Grace will, since it's akin to using an item. When paired with the strange crystal from the north that could amplify the effects and store a large amount of mana, the final product was a giant crystal that can activate Grace more than 20 times. The number was slowly building up as Shiro is figuring out its maximum capacity, but for now, it was roughly 20. Smaller crystals would only have 1 or 2 charges, but this was a step in the right direction. After some more research, she'll be able to manufacture some items that contain a charge of grace to ensure that dungeons become safer for her citizens. Looking at the half-anchor in front of her, Shiro had to admit that right now, the cost of production was a little too high. Once she reduced that, it'll be more efficient. She had a command running through the nanobots that control this anchor. It'll automatically expend a charge of grace once one of the party members was low on health. However, she is also able to activate it whenever she wanted. After all, sometimes she needed the defense boost given by grace if the target is at full health. With her father and Nantion's adoptive father being their vanguard along with Sylvia and Revel, she had to make sure she did everything in her power to keep them alive. Where are you two? Normally, I'd want to do a raid like this with you lot. The rewards will be good. Shiro thought with a small smile as she thought back to Madison and Lyrica. It's been quite a while since she had last saw them, and she can only hope that the two of them was doing fine. I'm sure they'll be fine. They're just as tenacious as you are after all. Nimue chuckled as Shiro smiled. True. I trust that they'll come back safe and sound. ####. Asterisk, bang. Slamming against the floor of the demon realm, Madison closed her eyes and slammed her hand down. The blood-red markings appeared on her body as a tier 6 magic circle expanded out with her in the center. Blood ritual. Madison spoke slowly as a great sword appeared in front of her. Stomping down, the ground cracked apart as she disappeared from her spot, appearing next to a shadowed figure who had black armor covering his entire body. She slammed the great sword into the side of his body. Adjusting her grip, she used the force of the rebound to swing her sword a second time. Asterisk, boom. Seeing that he managed to parry her sword, she let go and kicked him in the head. Stumbling back, the figure held her great sword and traced his finger along the blade, empowering the sword with his own magic. He was about to attack when Madison snapped her finger and detonated it in his face. However, it was just a smokescreen. Dashing through the smoke, Madison managed to grab the figure by the jaw as she knew she won. After fighting for hours, she finally got him to let his guard down. Asterisk, bang. Slamming him against the ground, she grabbed his leg with her spare hand and stomped down with her foot. Asterisk, crack. Feeling her foot sink into his chest, she pulled as hard as she could. The red runes on her body started to glow as a menacing aura erupted from her body. Ra! Shouting out as loud as she could, the flesh in her hands suddenly lost resistance. Asterisk, KRKKKKK. Ripping the leg and head off of the body, blood sprayed into the sky as Madison tossed away the body parts. As she was being bathed in the blood of a demon god, the runes on her body pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. Panting heavily, she was barely able to stand, but her trial wasn't over. There were still 5 more demon gods that she had to kill, and they were much stronger than the demon gods she faced earlier. Collapsing on the ground, she took this time to get as much rest as she could. While resting in the pool of blood, she ignored the fact that this blood was actually melting the rock beneath her. At this point, her physique had been tempered to a point that this was nothing but a warm bath to her. It was also this physique that allowed her to fight for hours and still maintain her concentration. Watching Madison attempt her trial from a distance, Macron had a worried look on his face. Madison has done well so far, but the last 5 was going to be hard. As her ancestor, he wanted her to stop now since the risks was high. But as someone who's been watching her grow the last few months, he knew her will was unbreakable. She had already shown him that she was worthy to become a demonic empress. Grandpa might be breaking the rules, but you were going to get this sooner or later. Macron thought with a small smile as he closed his eyes. Gold and black energy started to converge towards his hand as a system warning appeared in front of him. In order to transfer part of your divinity to entity, Madison, you will suffer a backlash and will not be able to regain or cultivate your divinity for a minimum of 2 years. As she is currently in a trial, this backlash will be increased. Are you sure you want to proceed? Tapping yes. Macron immediately coughed up a mouthful of blood as his insides felt like they were burning in lava. However, it was worth it in his eyes. He was already old. The new generation will rise, and the old will fade. Madison was going to be at the forefront of the revolution. To guarantee her survival, parting with a part of his divinity was a small price to pay. Forcing himself to stand up, he watched as the gold and black energy condensed into an orb in his hand. Curling his lips into a smile, he walked towards Madison. Before he could give her the orb, he noticed a figure teleporting behind him. I'm surprised that you actually got off your throne. Macron smiled. I saw your life force flicker. Macron, are you really going through with this? Glancing back, he could see a frown on his friend's face. I'm sure. Plus, I see her as my own granddaughter. You know I regret not being able to do much when I watched my descendants die one by one. Now that a promising saplings appeared before me, why wouldn't I want to help her grow? I just hope that the avatar you left behind will show her some mercy. You are the rank 1 demon god after all. Macron chuckled before placing the orb on top of Madison's fatigued body. Sitting in his throne, Rokarn opened his eyes and frowned when he saw lights converge in front of him. Raising up his hand, a great sword appeared in his grasp. Asterisk, bang. Throwing it towards the light, the sword was blocked by a barrier. Arya, Rokarn growled in displeasure. Rokarn, it's been a while since I last saw you. Arya smiled. Though I must say, it must feel pretty terrible to have your freedom stripped from your grasp. You are reduced to nothing but a tool for the system. Silence. Last time I saw you, you were nothing but a quivering mess that hid behind the God-Slayer, cowering at every sign of danger. If not for her benevolence towards you, you would be nothing. Rokarn replied while standing up. Times changed, Rokarn. You lost your freedom. I've become stronger, and the God-Slayer lost her glory. Arya shrugged. Yes, and I know that you must have done something to her. Why else would the God-Slayer be reduced to this? Rokarn shouted while standing in front of her. His figure towered over Arya as she could clearly feel his hostility and rage. Now, you should sit down and listen. Arya replied as she lost her smile. Slamming her palm into his chest, a Tier 9 magic circle expanded and launched him away from her. Asterisk bang. Slamming against the wall, Rokarn widened his eyes as his aura exploded. You took it, didn't you? Rokarn said as his voice was eerily calm. I don't know what you're talking about. If anything, that should be my question to you. Oh, demigod of chaos and destruction, what happened to the lowly demigod of death that I knew? Just as she finished her sentence, she realized that Rokarn had disappeared. Appearing beside her, a Tier 8 magic circle manifested on his fist. If it was just a normal Tier 8 magic circle, she wouldn't be too worried. However, a 9th layer was being formed. Black lightning flickered from his fist as she widened her eyes and activated a barrier with her own Tier 9 magic circle. Asterisk cling. Before his fist could reach her, Golden chains erupted from the void, latching onto his body and forcing him into submission. His magic was shattered apart, and a golden collar appeared around his neck, forcing him against the ground. He could only glare at Arya hatefully. My, not even you can overcome this, huh? Arya chuckled as she dismissed her barrier. But setting that aside, with you being chained up, I'll get to the main business. I cannot let you kill her. If you do, everything will end. Instead, I'd much rather you weaken her. Narrowing her eyes, she drew a tier 9 magic circle in the air before carving it into Rokarn's back. Gritting his teeth, Rokarn refused to let a single cry out as he continued to glare at her hatefully. The chains of the system dug into his flesh, stopping him from doing anything harmful to her. Once the magic circle had finished carving itself onto Rokarn's back, Arya stood up and prepared to leave. As her body was disappearing, she glanced back at him and smiled. I'll be watching. I hope I don't need to interfere, but we shall see. Just as she disappeared, the golden chains that bound him shattered apart. Standing back up, Rokarn tilted his head back and let out a malevolent cry that shook the castle. Taking deep breaths, he calmed his rage. Is that why you gave me this power, Godslayer? So that you can reclaim it once more in the event that you were weakened by her? Did you know about her dark desires all along? Hidden behind that smile was a woman who would one day cause you to lose everything. Rokarn thought to himself as he closed his eyes. He could still remember the day when he finally met the Godslayer again. This time, she wasn't alone. A young goddess with blonde hair hid shyly behind her, her eyes of curiosity and naive smile. To think that she would grow up into the woman she was now. Shaking his head, Rokarn glanced towards Earth. He has tried to delay it as much as possible so that the Godslayer could prepare herself, but time was running out. He will soon be forced to make a move, and he had no power to stop it. Arya, I didn't plan on killing her to begin with. He thought to himself as he walked out the room. As long as she is strong enough, everything will work out. ###****. Feeling a hand shake her, Sylvia rubbed her eyes and woke up. Glancing towards Chunyu, who was getting changed, she sat up. Did something happen? She asked as Chunyu nodded his head. MN, Shiro is calling everyone to the command center. Things are reaching a boiling point. Wait already? I thought we had half a week left. Sylvia widened her eyes and quickly jumped out of bed. Not quite. I also thought we had a half a week left, but the barrier holding them back on the moon has almost disappeared. Its rate of decay has sped up, and people are noticing the moon slowly turning red. Shiro informed as she was leaning by the door. The F***CK? Sylvia cried out as she didn't expect this. Sorry for the intrusion. I normally don't do this, but I'm teleporting you to the room. Get changed quickly. Also, this entire city is made from nanobots. Do you really think I would have no idea if someone was to have a crazy night? I just ignore it most of the time. Shiro shrugged as Sylvia blushed heavily before coming into a realization. Wait a minute. What? Shiro tilted her head. What do you mean by most of the time? Sylvia asked as Shiro choked on her saliva. There are times where I would accidentally see someone having a battle in bed. I'm scanning the whole city, so it's only natural that some slip past. Shiro replied as Sylvia continued to stare at her. While setting that aside, stop parading in your underwear and get changed, Shiro said while gesturing towards her. I'll wait outside. Come out as soon as you get changed. Watching Shiro leave the room, Sylvia turned to Chinyu. Do you think Shiro is a voyeur? Sylvia asked, but before Chinyu could reply, a note appeared in the air. Reading it, Sylvia coughed. Who knows? Considering the fact that I can view this entire city at all times, I suppose I am. But I wonder who's the crazier one between a voyeur and whatever you were last night. This is then followed up by an image of a smug Shiro with a knowing look in her eyes. Crumpling the paper and immediately destroying it, Sylvia quickly got changed with a blush in her face. Thinking about it for a moment, Sylvia whispered something into Chunyu's ears as he widened his eyes and coughed. ####. Teleporting everyone to the command center, Shiro displayed a hologram of the moon. As you can see from the projection, the barrier is barely holding together. From the gaps, you can see the army preparing themselves for an invasion. We'll be preparing to meet them in space to reduce the chances of collateral damage. I'll be supplying everyone with a mask that'll allow them to breathe in space. It's been tested rigorously and will hold together even if Revel was to punch it with all his strength. I've set up space stations for us to prepare in, as well as turrets that should be able to hold back the fodder for quite a while. Shiro explained while showing them their fortress in space. I'll send each of you a document briefing on your jobs and priorities, but just know that you will need to fight a demigod that forced back primordials at the end of this. There is no doubt that he'll have generals to fight under him, so try to save your best spells for when we need to kill him. Dad and Li Jian will be our vanguard, followed by Revel and Cyrodiil. Dad and Li Jian are at the front so that their skills can give us a boost. Sylvia, I want you to keep an eye on them so that when they fall back, you can give them some protection while healing Cyrodiil and Revel. They'll be our main tanks for this raid. Nodding her head, Sylvia activated a spell that marked both Li Jian and Koji. This mark will help me spot you in the crowd since I'll be honest, it'll be hard to find you if you're surrounded. Sylvia explained as both of them nodded their heads. Good. There isn't much else to talk about since our information is limited. For now, just keep your guard up and adapt to the situation accordingly. I have a crystal that stores 20 charges of grace, so we have 20 extra lives outside of what Sylvia can provide if things go south. I want everyone to make their final preparations and meet me back here in 20 minutes. I'll teleport us to the space station, Shiro ordered before sending everyone back. Looking up at the moon that was now slowly revealing its red glow, Shiro couldn't help but worry. Earlier, she sensed an outburst of malevolent energy. It was faint, but it caused shivers down her spine.